You wake up on a cold January morning in 1348. You don't know it yet. But this is the last year of your normal life. You don't know that in the next 12 months, 1 out of every 2 Europeans is going to die. You don't know that your mother, your youngest brother, the woman who sells bread on the corner, the priest who baptized you, 3 of your 5 children, will all be dead before Christmas. You don't know that in a city called Kaffa, on the other side of the Black Sea, Mongol ships catapulted infected corpses over the walls 2 years ago. You've never heard of Kaffa. You never will. But the Mongol commander, a man named Jani Beg, was laying siege to that Genoese trading colony when plague broke out in his own army. Desperate, vengeful, he ordered his catapults loaded with the swollen bodies of his own dead soldiers. Some accounts say thousands of corpses sailed over the walls. The Genoese inside panicked, threw the bodies into the sea, and fled in their galleys. Those galleys carried something they couldn't see. You don't know yet that something invisible, something microscopic, something traveling in the rats of those very ships is already crossing the Mediterranean, heading straight for you. You wake up, you drink your water from a clay cup, you pray to a God you have never doubted. You think about the day's work ahead, the fields, the workshop, the kitchen, the market. You have 8 months to live. This is the year 1348, and you are about to live through and most likely die during the greatest catastrophe in human history. To understand what is about to happen to you, you need to understand where your ending was being born. Somewhere in the steppes of Central Asia, most likely in the Tian Shan Mountains in what is today Kyrgyzstan, a tiny bacterium lived inside fleas that lived on marmots. You have never seen a marmot. You never will. You have never heard of Kyrgyzstan. The whole geography of your death is invisible to you. This bacterium has a name, Yersinia pestis. But you don't know the word bacterium. You don't know that germs exist. You don't know that the air you breathe is full of living things you cannot see. For you, disease is divine punishment, bad air, unfavorable stars, the alignment of Saturn and Jupiter, the wrath of God for sins you may not even remember committing. For you, the thing that is going to kill you doesn't even have a name. In 2022, researchers led by Monica Green at Arizona State University confirmed something extraordinary. Christian Nestorian cemeteries in Kyrgyzstan, dated to 1338, show the very first wave of the Black Death, almost 10 years before it reaches you. The gravestones carry inscriptions in Syriac script. They say things like, "Died of pestilence." Entire communities wiped out near a lake called Isikkul. You were sentenced a decade ago, and you don't know it. The plague traveled west along the Silk Road. It rode on the backs of merchants and Mongol horsemen. It crept through caravan stops. It killed entire trading posts in Samarkand. It reached the Crimea. It boarded ships. And now, in 1348, it is hours away from your door. If you happen to be an educated person, a priest, a noble, a literate merchant, you may have heard strange rumors coming from the east. Letters from travelers speak of a monstrous plague striking the Arab cities. In Baghdad, they say half the city has died. In Damascus, they say the dead are being buried in trenches. In Cairo, they say the streets are silent. You think it's an exaggeration. You always think stories from the East are exaggerations. Wealthy merchants in Venice and Genoa begin to worry, but not about you. They worry about trade routes. They worry about spice prices. They worry about contracts and ledgers. They don't think about people like you. In the autumn of 1347, 12 Genoese galleys dock in Constantinople. The sailors are sick. They have a fever that no one has seen before. Within days, they are dead. Within a week, thousands of Byzantines are dead too. The Byzantine emperor, a man named John VI Cantacuzénos, watches his own 13-year-old son, Andronikos, die in his arms. The boy was healthy in the morning. By night, he was burning. By the next sunrise, he was gone. The emperor, broken, picks up his pen. He writes, with a trembling hand, there was no hope, not in doctors, nor in medicines. Those who cared for the sick died with them. The disease was carried not only by contact with the infected, but even by the breath of those near them. You are not in Constantinople. You are thousands of miles away. You cannot imagine what is happening there. The sound of bells ringing constantly for the dead. The smoke of funeral pyres rising over the Hagia Sophia, the harbour empty of ships. But the galleys that fled Constantinople, escaping the plague, are heading in your direction. They sail through the Aegean, through the straits, into the open Mediterranean. They carry silk and silver and grain and rats and fleas and death. Imagine you are a Sicilian fisherman in October of 1347. You're mending nets at the port of Messina. The air is warm, the sea is calm. You see 12 Genoese ships entering the harbour, slowly, strangely slowly. No one is waving from the deck. No one is shouting orders. You walk over to help tie them up. You see the sailors. They have black lumps on their necks. They're burning with fever. Some of them are already dead on the deck, lying where they fell. The smell hits you before you understand what you're looking at. The authorities of Messina come running. They order the ships out, push them back to sea. They shout, they cannot land here. But it's too late. The rats have already disembarked. They scurry down the mooring ropes. The fleas have already jumped onto dogs, onto cats, onto people, onto the rats of the city. The harbour cats fight the ship rats. The fleas don't care which body they're on. In 1 week, the port is deserted. In 2 weeks, your family is dead. In 1 month, Messina buries more people than were born there in a decade. The bells of the cathedral ring without stopping. Eventually, they stop ringing because no one is left to ring them. The chronicler Michele de Piazza, a survivor, wrote, "The sailors carried the disease in their very bones. Whoever spoke with them died. Whoever touched them died. Death entered the houses with the visitors. Whole families lay down together in their beds and rose only as corpses." Now, come back to yourself. It's January 1348. You're in Marseille or Pisa or Genoa or any port on the Mediterranean coast. The plague has travelled, ship by ship, from Sicily. The galleys that were expelled from Messina simply sailed to the next harbour, and the next, and the next. You wake up one morning and notice your neighbour hasn't come outside. He always opens his shutters at dawn. Today, they remain closed. The next day, you hear crying from inside the house, a long, low wail. On the third day, you see the men of the church entering with cloth over their mouths, carrying a small wooden coffin, then another, then a third. You don't understand yet. You pray for your neighbour's family. You think it was bad luck, some illness, some misfortune. These things happen. A week later, it's your wife lying in bed. She's sweating. She says she has a terrible headache, that the light hurts her eyes, that her bones ache as if she had been beaten. You touch her forehead. It's burning, hotter than any fever you have ever felt. At night, you notice something, a dark lump under her armpit, the size of a walnut. When you touch it, she screams in pain, a scream you will hear for the rest of your life, however short that life turns out to be. You still have no name for this, but you feel, deep in your stomach, that something terrible is beginning, that this is not an ordinary sickness, that you are inside the first chapter of a story that has no good ending. Municipal records from Marseille show that 80% of the city's notaries died in the first 3 months of 1348. 80%. The bureaucracy collapsed. Wills could not be drawn up. Inheritances could not be registered. Property changed hands by rumor and force. Entire families disappeared without leaving a written trace. Court cases evaporated when both plaintiff and defendant were buried in the same week. In March of 1348 in Venice, terrified merchants convinced the Doge to do something that had never been done in history. Ships arriving from abroad must wait 40 days at anchor before unloading. 40 days, isolated, while observers watched for signs of disease. If sailors fell ill, the ship was burned. If they remained healthy, they could finally come ashore. 40. In Italian, 40 giorni, 40 days, quarantine. The word you use today when you get sick was born in that month, in a desperate decision by desperate men, in a city built on water, watching its trade routes turn into highways for death. In Florence, in those same months, an 18-year-old named Giovanni Boccaccio is watching his city die. Florence is the richest city in Europe, the center of banking, the home of Dante, 120,000 people. In 3 months, it loses 60% of them, 70,000 human beings gone before the leaves of summer fall. Years later, as a survivor, Boccaccio will write, "Fathers abandoned sons, wives abandoned husbands, brothers fled from brothers. The dead were piled in the streets like damaged goods. There were so many corpses brought to the churches every day that the holy ground could not contain them all, and great trenches were dug and the bodies thrown in, layer upon layer, like merchandise stowed in a ship. Come back to yourself. Your wife has died. Your mother is sick. You feel a headache beginning, a heaviness in your limbs, a heat under your skin. What you don't know is that this disease has 3 different forms, and your fate depends on which one takes you. The first form is the bubonic. If you're lucky, this is what you'll get. Enormous lumps, called buboes, will grow in your groin, in your armpits, on your neck. They can reach the size of an apple. They are hard. They are black. They hurt like knife wounds pressed into your body and held there. You will be delirious with fever for 3 to 5 days. You will vomit. Your urine will turn dark. You will see things that aren't there. Angels, devils, dead relatives reaching for you. Your tongue will swell. Your breath will smell of rot. The buboes may burst, releasing a foul black pus, and if they burst, you have a 30% chance of surviving. If they don't burst, you die. The second form is the pneumonic. If the plague reaches your lungs, it's almost guaranteed that you die, and you die fast. Within 2 days, you will start coughing blood. Cough by cough, more blood. Every breath becomes harder, as if your chest is filling with stones. You slowly drown in your own blood while your family stands helpless beside you, and every cough sends infected droplets into the air, condemning whoever is in the room. The third form is the septicemic. If the plague enters your bloodstream directly, you die within 24 hours. Your entire skin turns black, bruises spreading like ink dropped in water. Your extremities, your fingers, your nose, your ears rot while you're still alive. The flesh literally dies on your body. People look at you and see a walking corpse. Some of the dying are abandoned in the streets because no one can bear to look at them. This is why they call it the Black Death. Imagine your city in July of 1348, summer heat. The kind of heat that bakes the stones of the street and rises shimmering from the rooftops. There are no more grave diggers. The priests have died. The doctors have fled the city in carriages packed with everything they could carry. There are bodies in the streets. There are bodies in courtyards. There are bodies inside the churches, slumped in the pews where they came to pray and were too weak to leave. There are bodies in cradles. There are bodies still seated at dinner tables, dead dogs, dead cats, dead horses, dead pigs. The animals starve because no one feeds them. Then they die of the plague too, because the fleas don't discriminate. The smell is so strong that travelers miles away know when they're approaching an infected city. The wind carries it across fields. Pilgrims turn back. Messengers refuse to deliver letters. The world begins to shrink to whatever you can see from your own window. You burn herbs, rosemary, lavender, myrrh, juniper, trying to purify the air. You stuff your nose with cloth soaked in vinegar. You believe it's the bad air, the miasma, that's killing you. You're not entirely wrong. The pneumonic form does spread through breath. You're entirely wrong about everything else. The chronicler Henry Knighton wrote, "The stench was such that the living could not pass through the streets. Cold mornings were blessings, for the cold masked the smell of the dead." In the village of Leicester, in a small enclosure of cemetery, more than 400 died. In the parish of Holy Cross, more than 400. In the parish of St. Margaret, 700. And so it was in every parish. You won't die without fighting. You try everything. You bleed yourself, open veins in your arm with a sharp blade to let the evil out. You get worse. You grow weaker. You faint from blood loss, thinking you are being healed. You drink liquid gold, which you heard was the cure of the rich. The wealthy can afford it. It poisons you. You die of gold poisoning, thinking you were saving yourself. Your last hours are spent vomiting metal. You rub raw onion on the buboes, crushed snake, snake saliva, powdered pearl, frog skin. You drink mercury. You drink your own urine because someone said a holy man in the East was cured this way. You join processions of flagellants, men who whip themselves in public with leather cords tipped with iron nails, begging God for forgiveness. They march barefoot from city to city. They strip to the waist. They beat themselves until blood runs down their backs in sheets. They believe their suffering will appease God. They walk from town to town, leaving trails of blood and spreading plague to every village they enter. And when nothing works, when your God seems deaf, your doctor has fled, your priest is dead, you look for someone to blame. The human mind cannot accept meaningless suffering. It demands a cause. It demands a face. In February of 1349 in Strasbourg, 900 Jews will be burned alive in a single afternoon, accused of poisoning the wells. They didn't poison anything. There were no poisoned wells. Jews were dying at the same rate as Christians, sometimes higher. But you need someone to blame. Something has to make sense. Some explanation has to fit inside your shattered understanding of the world. And what if you're not in a city? What if you're a peasant woman in a forgotten village in the Alps, or on the English plains, or in the forests of Poland? The plague reaches you more slowly, but it reaches you. The roads are slower in the countryside. The traffic is thinner, but it cannot be stopped. Maybe you've never heard of Marseille, never seen the sea, never been more than 10 miles from the cottage where you were born. But in May, a merchant passes through your village, selling cloth. In June, he is dead, somewhere on a road you will never see. In July, 3 of your children are dead in your own bed. By August, your village of 40 people has 12 survivors. The fields go unharvested. The animals wander free. The bread oven, the heart of the village, sits cold. For you, there is no theory. There is no science. It's divine punishment. It's witchcraft. It's the old woman at the edge of the woods who must have cursed everyone. It's the end of the world, and you are inside it, alone with your remaining children, watching the world die. For every chronicler who wrote about this year, 10,000 women like you died without anyone recording their name. Your story, the true story of 1348, is in the bones buried without ceremony, beneath churches no one visits anymore, beneath fields that have been ploughed for 600 years, over the graves of people no one remembers. Before we continue this journey, and trust me, what comes next is even darker, I need to ask you something. If this story is keeping you here, if you're feeling what it was like to live in that year, please take 1 second to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. I'm Walter, and I rebuild history piece by piece, year by year, city by city. Every week I bring back to life a moment the textbooks made too small. Subscribing tells me to keep going. Liking tells the algorithm to show this to someone else who needs to walk through these centuries with us. Now, back to 1348. The plague has only just begun to climb. While the south of Europe is collapsing, in the north it still feels far away. But it isn't. The plague crosses the Alps, on mules, on merchants, on pilgrims, on deserting soldiers carrying everything they own in dirty sacks. It travels at the speed of a walking man. It travels at the speed of trade. It travels at the speed of fear, because fear is what makes people flee, and fleeing people carry the disease faster than anything else. In June of 1348, it reaches Avignon, the seat of the Pope at that moment, because the papacy has temporarily moved out of Rome. Avignon is a city of 50,000 people. In 3 months, it loses half of them. The streets around the Palais des Papes fill with bodies. The Rhone River turns into a graveyard. Pope Clement VI is terrified. His secretaries die around him. His doctors die. His priests die. The cardinals close their doors. Some of them flee to their country estates, some of them die anyway. His personal physician, an intelligent man named Guy de Chauliac, who will later write one of the first honest medical accounts of the plague, proposes something desperate. Lock the Pope in a room with 2 enormous bonfires burning 24 hours a day. The theory? The heat drives away the bad air. The miasma cannot survive in such temperatures. Pope Clement VI spends 3 months between bonfires, in the middle of a French summer, sweating, praying, afraid. He grants mass absolution to all who die in the plague. He cannot bury them, but he can save their souls. And then he survives. Guy de Chauliac himself catches the plague and survives too, one of the few doctors who did, and he wrote down everything he saw. When the plague finally passes through Avignon, the Pope authorizes corpses to be thrown into rivers and lakes because the cemeteries are full and the ground itself is full. 10,000 people will be dumped into the Rhone River that summer. The water that drinks the saints now drinks the dead. Now imagine you are in Paris, the largest city in Europe, 200,000 inhabitants. You live near Notre Dame. Not the Notre Dame you know from photographs, the Notre Dame of 1348. Recently built, barely 100 years old, which is recent for a cathedral, still smelling of new stone. The stained glass still vivid. In October the plague arrives. By December it's out of control. The university, the Sorbonne, already 100 years old, closes its doors. The students flee back to their villages, often carrying the plague with them. The royal family retreats to the countryside. King Philip VI orders prayers and processions. The processions spread the plague faster. The chronicler Jean de Venette, who lived through that winter, wrote, "The dead were so many that they dug enormous holes and placed corpses one on top of another, like salted cod in a barrel, and a little earth was scattered over them, and then more bodies, and so on, until the pit was full to the brim." The Cemetery of the Innocents, today a tourist square in central Paris, received 500 bodies per day in January of 1349, 500 per day, in a city where the normal rate was 20. The grave pits filled in days, new ones were dug, they filled too. For centuries afterward, anyone digging foundations in that neighbourhood would strike bone. And in England, English sailors at the port of Calais still think the plague is the continent's problem. That it will stop at the English Channel, that the water will protect them, that God favours the English, that the disease is a punishment for French sins, not English ones. In June of 1348, an infected sailor disembarks in a small town called Melcombe Regis, you would call it Weymouth today, a quiet harbour on the southern coast. 4 weeks later, he is dead. 4 months later, London is covered in funeral smoke. The Thames carries bodies. The royal court flees to Windsor. King Edward III buries his own daughter, Princess Joan, who was on her way to be married in Spain. She died in Bordeaux. She was 15. For you, in 1348, the church is everything. The church registers your birth. The church marries you. The church buries you. The church explains the world to you from the moment you can understand language until the moment you draw your last breath. The church owns the calendar, the holidays, the saints, the meaning of life and death. But now you see something you never thought you'd see. Priests fleeing, priests dying in greater proportion than the people because they were the ones tending to the sick, hearing final confessions, anointing the dying. Priests who survive but refuse to enter infected homes, who deliver last rites from the doorway or from the street, or refuse to come at all. Some monasteries lose every single monk. Some convents are found empty, the nuns dead in their cells. You pray, it doesn't work. You confess, it doesn't work. You beg Saint Roche, who is the saint against plague. You beg Saint Sebastian, who was killed by arrows and who therefore should understand piercing pain. You beg the Virgin Mary, the Mother of Mothers. They all seem deaf. And a question begins to grow inside you, a question that will change Europe for the next 200 years. If God exists, if God is good, why is he letting this happen? The historian Norman Cantor of New York University argued in his work In the Wake of the Plague that the Protestant Reformation of 1517 began in the spiritual ruins of 1348. The blind faith that held the Middle Ages together was the first victim of the Black Death. Martin Luther's hammer nailing his 95 theses to a church door was an echo of the silence that fell when survivors in 1348 prayed and received no answer. At some point in 1349 or 1350, you notice something strange. For the first time in your life, someone is asking you to work, offering you money, offering you land, offering you better food, better shelter, a piece of meat on Sundays. For you, a serf, a peasant, a common worker, this is unprecedented. Before the plague, labour was abundant and land was scarce. You were born bound to the Lord of the land. Your son would be born bound. Your grandson would be born bound. That was the order of things. That was, you had been taught, the will of God. But now half the workers have died, and whoever survived, you, is worth gold. The Lord who once whipped you now needs you. The Lord who once took half your harvest now offers you wages. You start refusing work. You demand more. You receive more. You migrate from village to village looking for better offers. You leave behind the house your father built and become, for the first time in your family's history, a free worker. The nobles try to fight back. In 1351, the English Parliament passes the Statute of Labourers, freezing wages at pre-plague levels. The workers ignore it. The attempt fails. Local officials cannot enforce it because they themselves need labour. In 1381, the Peasants' Revolt in England, led by a man named Wat Tyler, becomes the first great popular rebellion of the modern era. Peasants march on London. They burn tax records. They demand the abolition of serfdom, and it is a direct daughter of 1348. The historian Samuel Cohn of the University of Glasgow argues that without the Black Death, feudalism could have lasted another 200 years. The plague killed half of Europe and freed the other half. Wages doubled. Living standards rose. The poor ate meat. The poor wore wool. The poor began, for the first time in centuries, to talk back. And here comes the most disturbing paradox of 1348. The 2 generations after the plague will produce the greatest explosion of art and intellectual life in European history. They will call it the Renaissance. Boccaccio, a survivor, writes the Decameron in 1353, a collection of 100 stories told by 10 young people fleeing the plague in a country villa outside Florence. It is the first great work of bourgeois literature, full of laughter and sex and human folly, written in the shadow of mass death. Petrarch, a survivor who lost his beloved Laura to the plague, redefines European poetry. Chaucer is born 3 years after 1348 and grows up in the ruins. He will write the Canterbury Tales, a portrait of ordinary people, more alive than any literature before it. The Renaissance did not happen despite the plague. It happened, in part, because of it. When half the world dies, the survivors begin asking questions they never asked before, questions about beauty, about time, about what it means to be human in a universe that may not care. But not everything born in 1348 is art and progress. There are horrors too, horrors that you, perhaps, will take part in. In Strasbourg, February of 1349, 900 Jews are tied to stakes on a wooden platform built in the Jewish cemetery itself and burned alive in a single afternoon. Whole families, children, the elderly, accused of poisoning wells, accused of causing the plague. In Basel, in Speyer, in Mainz, in Cologne, in Frankfurt, in Brussels, entire Jewish communities are exterminated. Some are burned, some are walled up inside their own synagogues. Some flee east into Poland, where King Casimir III offers them protection. The map of European Jewry shifts forever in those years. Pope Clement VI issues a papal bull forbidding this. He says it's absurd. Jews are also dying of the plague. He offers them sanctuary in Avignon. But the mob does not listen to bulls. The mob needs someone to blame. Something has to make sense. Perhaps you took part. Perhaps you only watched, standing at the back of a crowd holding the hand of your remaining child. Perhaps you tried to protect your Jewish neighbors. Some Christians did, at the risk of their own lives, hiding families in cellars and lofts. 1348 is not only the year when many people died, it is the year when many people, in panic, killed. December 1348, it's cold, you survived. You don't know it yet, but you are among the 50% who remained. You don't know yet that there are more outbreaks coming. In 1361, in 1369, in 1374, and on and on. The plague will return generation after generation until the 17th century. It will become a feature of life, like winter, like hunger, like war. But on this December night, you are still alive. You light a candle from the embers of the hearth. You look at the empty table where your family used to eat. 6 chairs, 1 person. Your wife died in February, your father in April, your 2 children in July. On the same day, an hour apart, the older one holding the younger one's hand until both stopped breathing. You don't know it yet, but you will never again be the person you were in January. No one will. The Europe that emerges from 1348 is no longer the Europe that entered 1348. The continent itself has aged a century in 12 months. How many died in the end? You don't know. No one knows for certain. But modern researchers, using parish records, archaeological excavations, DNA analysis from tooth pulp of medieval skeletons, estimate in Europe 50% of the population, about 50 million people. Half of everyone you ever knew, half of every face in every market. In Asia, an estimated 100 million. In the Middle East, 30 million. Cairo alone may have lost 1/3 of its people. In North Africa, 20 million. Total, between 75 and 200 million human beings. The range is wide because the bookkeepers of the world died with the people they were counting. To put this in perspective, it was the greatest demographic catastrophe in human history up to that point. It was the only event in all of recorded history that can be compared, in proportional terms, to the extermination of the indigenous peoples of the Americas after 1492. In some Italian cities, the plague killed a higher percentage than the bombings of the Second World War killed in the cities they destroyed. These numbers come from the work of historian Ola Benedicto of the University of Oslo in his definitive work, The Black Death, 1346 to 1353, The Complete History. He spent decades cross-checking parish records, tax rolls, monastery archives, and burial inscriptions. His conclusion, the medieval chroniclers, the ones who wrote half the world died, they were not exaggerating. If anything, they were underestimating. How long do you think it took Europe to recover from 1348? 5 years? 10? 30? No. The population of Europe only returned to its 1347 levels around the year 1500. In some regions, 1550. In others, 1600. More than 250 years to fill the empty houses. Imagine, you survive in 1348, you live until 1380, a respectable age for the time. You die. Your grandchildren are born in 1390. They live their lives, they die in 1450. Your great-grandchildren are born in 1430. They marry, they raise children of their own. They die in 1490. And in 1450, your city is still smaller than it was in 1347. More than 100 years later, the scar is still open. Buildings stand empty, streets are quieter, markets are smaller. The cathedral that once filled on Sundays now half fills. Entire villages disappear from the map. Forests grow where there were once cultivated fields. Today, satellites still find the outlines of ghost villages in Germany, in England, in France, villages that existed in 1347 and were never inhabited again. In England alone, more than 1,000 such deserted medieval villages have been identified. Their names are remembered only in old church registers. The grass grows over their bones. Medieval Europe The Europe that had existed for 500 years ended in 1348. What came after was another world, a world with fewer people but greater wages, a world with weaker faith but stronger states, a world that questioned everything because everything had failed. Come back to today. Come back to your couch, your bed, your screen, the room you're sitting in right now. You think 1348 is far away, that it's ancient history, that none of it touches you. But look, when you say, "I'm in quarantine," you are using a word that was invented by terrified Venetians in March of 1348. Every time the word has been used since, through plagues, through wars, through pandemics, through the year 2020, it has carried in it the memory of those 40 days at anchor. When you go to a public hospital, you are using a system that was born in the mass graves of that year. The idea that society itself has a duty to care for the sick was forged in the failure of every other institution to do so. When you negotiate a better salary with your boss, you are exercising a right that was won by the survivors of the Black Death. People who, for the first time in history, could look the Lord of the Manor in the eye and say no. Every paycheck you have ever earned carries an echo of that defiance. When you read modern literature, with individual characters, complex psychology, human doubt, ordinary people made important, you are reading the tradition that began with Boccaccio, a survivor of 1348 who wrote about human pleasure, human stupidity, and human love in a world where God seemed to have died. 1348 is not distant from you. 1348 is in every word you use, in every right you have, in every question you dare to ask, in every doubt you allow yourself to feel. The dead of that year built, without knowing it, the world in which you live. I want to ask you something now, and I want a real answer in the comments. If you had been alive in 1348, knowing what you know today about germs, about quarantine, about disease, what would you do differently? Would you flee to the countryside the moment you heard the first rumors? Would you try to save your family at all costs, even knowing you might infect them by trying? Would you turn against your neighbors in fear? Or would you be one of the few who tried to protect the Jewish communities being burned? Would you keep your faith? Would you have any faith left by December? Write your answer in the comments below. I read every single one, and the best reflections often shape the next videos on this channel, because each city of 1348 has its own story, and each one is brutal in its own way. In Constantinople, it's where everything began in Europe and where an emperor watched his own son die. In Florence, a young man lost his entire family and wrote one of the greatest works of Western literature in the smoking ruins. In Venice, terrified merchants invented the concept of public health and changed the meaning of borders forever. In Paris, mass graves received 500 bodies per day in a city that thought of itself as the center of civilization. In London, something happened that changed the destiny of England and therefore the world forever. Each of these stories deserves its own video, and I am going to tell every single one of them, one by one, over the coming weeks. If you survived these 35 minutes of 1348 with me, subscribe to the channel, because the story of this year is not finished, and you still have to cross each of these cities with me. I'm Walter, and I'll see you in the next one.